This is the Amp Hour Podcast, recorded May 12th, 2014. Episode 198, with returning guest Michael Osman, Planetic, Portalab, Packaging.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And I'm Michael Osman of Great Scott Gadgets.
Hey, Mike.
Back again. We got RF expert in the house, man.
Thanks for having me. I don't know if I call myself an RF expert. I do a lot of it, but that doesn't mean I'm particularly good at it.
Well, that's more than us.
Yeah.
This show could turn into a complete mess because I've got my IT dude come in like less than an hour probably, so I might have to bail early. I'm getting my new internet connection. Woohoo! I'm stepping into the 1990s and I'm going to have 8 megabit upload.
Yes.
And maybe you'll leave and then come back and then be at higher speed.
Right.
Right.
And all our listeners can hear what it sounds like.
You can talk twice as fast or something.
Yeah.
Dave's voice goes to ludicrous speed.
Even higher pitch than it already is.
And of course, I might get washed away. I don't know if people heard that in the background, but there is a massive thunderstorm going on here right now. So I might either get washed away or blacked out or something like that. So we'll see.
So
Hey,
you get this automatic notification from the government. Warning, Will Robinson. They push it to your phone because, well, you know, the NSA is tracking you everywhere you go anyway. So
Sure, Dave. Yeah. No, I don't know. It's an Android thing. I think it's well, I don't know, Mike.
Oh,
do you
really? Okay.
You run like Android or iPhone in the States?
I run Android, but I don't have any emergency service on it that I know of.
Huh.
I don't know.
Maybe
There's
it's
the
built
emergency
in.
alert service.
Yeah.
That may have a built-in feature that I don't know about.
Right.
Okay. Well, yeah.
That's tracking you everywhere you go.
Hopefully, if you do need it, it does turn on.
Right. Yeah.
I imagine up in the mountains of Colorado too. They're like, so it's gonna snow, but it like always snows, so you're probably used to it.
And it's like, what's that beep
couple
beep?
feet.
Oh, here comes a tornado and there's sharks in it. Oh, Sharknado.
Sharknado. Yep. There you go.
Yeah.
We haven't had one of those in Colorado yet.
Yeah. Well.
Right.
You
Okay.
gotta watch out, man. There's always room for a sequel.
I think we had that storm though that you're getting now.
Oh yeah.
Because we got dumped. We got about 2 feet of snow at my house yesterday.
Whoa.
Dude.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Snow, what's that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's white and fluffy, and
It's-
it sucks.
It's a foreign
Like,
concept.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mike, you're going to be out in this neck of the woods. Is that right? You're going to be this way?
Yeah, I'm going to be out for Hamvention in Dayton.
That's awesome. So, what are you talking about there?
I have a little talk on HackRF and like how you can use it to kind of explore your digital world and try to encourage people who maybe have been an amateur radio operator for a while and know a lot about that kind of stuff and voice and maybe some digital modes in the amateur radio community who maybe haven't had a chance to explore things around them like their garage door openers and Bluetooth devices and home automation systems and all these kinds of crazy things that are around us in wireless these days. And that's one of the things I hope that the HackRF project can enable is more people exploring those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, is this your first Hamvention?
It is.
You're in for it.
Don't take your gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that is frowned upon.
That is not allowed anymore.
Oh, sorry. That's just so hilarious. That's so hilarious to a
Sometimes you
non-Yank.
gotta say, I think, well, whatever. I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that. Don't feed the troll, right?
Right. No, I wasn't planning on bringing a gun.
You're not planning on it. What about if
No.
pack gear? You're gonna. So your
for me.
first time in Dayton, though, is that right? Ever?
No, I have been to Dayton before. I went a couple years ago for a very small information security event, but I haven't been to Hamvention before, and this is only my second amateur radio event that I've ever been to, and the first one was pretty small, like 100 people.
Yeah.
So that's pretty small.
This will be.
I thought ours was small, but no.
I don't even know how many go to Hamvention, but isn't it like upwards of 10,000?
They always list. So they always list ticket sales, and that's up at 25,000 actually.
25. Yeah. Okay.
Is that only on a single day, or is it spread over a weekend?
It's it's a 3-day weekend, and really a lot of that's front loaded as well. Because like the first day, you'll get a lot of people coming in just for the flea market, and like 5 in the morning, like 6 in the morning.
The flea market
stuff.
is the big thing. That's the big attraction at these Hamvention, and they do turn up at 5 a.m. Like I went and sold stuff out of my boot. If you, Mike, if you haven't seen the other video I did at Hamvention here, and and I turned up at I thought I was turning up early at 8 a.m. and I knew it started at 6 a.m. Or whatever, the car boot sales, but I thought, no one will turn up. I turned up and everyone said, oh, yeah, you're late. I was the last person there to turn up at the car boot sale, and holy crap.
Wow.
Half
if
the
you look at the
people
cross section of the demographics, it lines up pretty well with the early crowd, right? I mean, it's like these are this is the moon over my hammy crowd, right? I mean, they are getting their early bird specials.
So, Chris, I guess you're not going to Hamvention this year, huh?
No. I was there last year, as it goes, it seems like I think we're going to continue to see Maker Faire and Hamvention scheduled on the same weekend for the foreseeable future. So I will be out in Maker Faire and at SolidCon after that. So I'm actually going to be out in the Bay Area for about 9 days. So long trip. And we'll see how that all goes.
Are you taking your portable lab?
Of course. Why do you think I jumped on it so much? I mean,
I know.
Yeah, you can't be away from your lab for 9 days.
Well, I mean that's the real problem. So the real problem is we just crossed the 4 week. We just finished the 4th week of contextual electronics. We're about halfway into the build. There was we were buying parts and stuff like that. But we're getting into the difficult parts of this right now with the SSOP soldering. We're doing drag soldering now, and stuff like that, and it's getting kind of intense, and of course that lines up right with Maker Faire. So what I'd really like to do is get it to the point where I'm, almost just starting to talk to it with an Arduino, doing the programming stuff. But I don't know. It'll be interesting being on the road with my lab. Did you guys see the pictures? You saw pictures?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
So I may have missed a little bit of the development process, but I think the last I heard you were talking about doing a cosmetic case, and then I saw photos and it looked like a Pelican case.
Yes, it was a Pelican. Yeah, I can't believe Chris hadn't heard of these.
No, I had heard of them.
Pelican cases.
No, I had heard of them, but the thing was...
But you don't worship them,
Well, I had thought... I didn't quite understand the ruggedness of other types of cases, right? So... The makeup cases and even the case, I ended up buying a case before the Pelican, and it showed up, and it's just and then I went back and read more of the reviews, and there's some of the reviews buried in there were I put this thing through a single flight, and it actually fell apart, the entire case fell apart, then
wow.
So that's when, of course, the only option kind of went down to the ruggedized plastic. So it's just. Like any project, right? Until you know all the information, you can't get it right. So,
there aren't a whole lot of options when you want to put things in that are both fragile and heavy.
Yeah, exactly, right.
There's only a couple of things on the market, and those Pelican cases are like the industry standard for moving test gear and stuff around, and guns for you Yanks, and
of course,
they're big in the gun culture, and other sorts of sensitive gear, and of course the roadies have their own sort of brands. I think they like, but they
Gator
also use the Pelicans.
And, what was the one you found? You found SKB.
Yeah,
That's
I found
one, right?
Yeah, SKB. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so I started looking at this stuff, and I actually bought a different one first, and then quickly did the math and went back and realized that it was too heavy and too big as well. There's just so much conflicting information online about trying to get it through airports and stuff like that. I didn't realize, at least in American Airlines or the U.S. carriers, you're only allowed to have 62 total inches of dimension. So length plus width times height, or plus height, rather.
It's called girth, yeah. So they actually measure the girth. So you can have a long, thin thing, and it's, or something like that, and it's still okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not just the maximum dimensions. It's like shipping stuff with the post office. The post office do that here. They measure the length, the width, and then so you do it on a girth basis. So if it's over a certain girth, sorry, can't send it. It's like, but it only weighs a kilo.
Right, yeah.
No.
It's just a canoe. It's really light. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see how it works. I mean, I started cutting out foam and stuff like that too, and I actually took it home. I was at home for Mother's Day this past weekend, so I just threw it in the car and tried it out. And I built in like a back channel to actually put in the wiring and stuff like that, and I cut out vents for all the because that's another thing you have to worry about with like foam is making sure it doesn't overheat and that there's air intake and stuff like that. But the thing I have realized is actually that so the Bench Buddy's kind of designed around an ATX power supply, and it's kind of just using the standard rails, plus minus 12, 5 volt, 3.3. I think the thing I'd like to do next is actually keep spinning out different tools based on that. So doing like a boost converter off the 5 volt, because the 5 volt rail has like, it's 5 volts, but you can get like 35 amps out of it, So putting that
crazy,
putting that through a couple transformers, getting a plus or minus 30 volt rail with a couple amps, and see what I can do with power wise, and actually put some interesting switching stuff in there, and then actually build that into the case because the ATX is already in there. And
yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, so I'm trying to make I'm trying to go big, man. I really want to make this a full thing. I don't know. So we'll see. It's going to be a work in progress for a while.
Excellent.
Do you ever transport stuff, Mike? I mean, I guess you probably travel pretty light, right?
I travel pretty light. Depends on where I'm going, but I usually, probably 50 to 75% of the time, I don't really take any gear other than what fits in my laptop backpack.
Yeah.
But then sometimes if I'm going to a conference where I expect to do some hardware hacking, I'll just like throw a soldering iron and a heat gun into my suitcase. And maybe like a handheld oscilloscope.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Do you ever do any of those hacking or hackathons, the hardware hackathons? You ever see any of those?
Not a hardware one, no.
Those are starting to pop up more. It's interesting because I always wonder about that. Like, it feels like the person that would show up with the most gear would win, right? I mean, like not necessarily like test gear, but just variety of sub-circuits that are already built that you could basically bolt together. If you had that, you'd basically be in a really good spot. But I don't know. I've never done it personally.
It even had a hackathon. Well, they used the term hackathon at the CeBIT event I went to, and this is like an business IT conference, and they had this hackathon thing upstairs. I didn't actually see what they were doing, but I think it's like the startups just actually showing their stuff and pitching and things like that. I don't think there's actually any soldering or anything going on up there, but yeah, they're using the term. It's certainly a buzz term going around. Hackathon.
Yeah. I know personally, I'm not a big fan of the hackathons, software hackathons. I mean, I think they might be great for some people, but just for me personally, that kind of environment is the worst environment for me to write code in.
Oh, yeah, I'd have to agree. Yeah.
I cannot write code and, in any quantity times quality, except like late at night on my living room couch, and that alone, that's just me personally. That's where I'm productive on software.
Yeah. Yeah, there is kind of this expectation that it's like, oh, we'll just put on headphones, right? I mean, you'll be able to do whatever you need to with headphones on. Everybody works in an open floor plan, right? It's like, well, no, not everybody works the same way. So
no.
Yeah,
I haven't worked in an open floor plan for years, and I also have a hard time working with music on.
Oh yeah.
It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm like doing a PCB assembly and it's kind of mindless,
yeah,
then I'll turn some music on. But if I'm trying to do something that's complicated, like writing code or designing a circuit, then I find music very distracting.
I find that if there's lyrics for me, then it's But I'll put on like you ever heard Tuvan throat singing before?
Oh, no.
I have a playlist.
It'll be yodeling next.
Yeah, it's basically like different type of yodeling. It's weird.
Yeah.
But it's
I
it's
can't have. Yeah, I don't do the music while I'm working thing.
Yeah,
I feel kind of guilty these days. It's like now that I don't drive anywhere either, that it's like, oh well, podcasts, huh? I don't really listen to those much anymore. So I guess
I have just enough of a drive that I can like listen to the Amp Hour every week.
Oh,
that's about it.
Nice. We're sorry, it's just us.
I'm behind though. I've only listened to like the first half hour of last week's show because I was out of town.
You're not missing much. So back to hackathons. Actually, I was going to say about that too. It seems like there's always like the thing I didn't actually realize, and I was corrected on this. I was always like, well, it seems like the ideas are always so trite as well. It seemed like the ones that come out of it. Like I've seen one where it's like, oh, ours is a site that helps you find a ice cream truck in the area, right? It'll alert your phone where the closest one is, or what that one I keep going back to that I make fun of, where it's we sell cereal milk, right? It's milk in a jug with cereal already floating in it, so it tastes like cereal, like Fruit Loops. And it's like that sounds like something someone would come up with in a energy drink fueled haze of 48 hours, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, but apparently that's not the purpose. The purpose is actually just to kind of see if you kind of click with your teammates. I always, because they always promote it as like, oh, well, you can start a company out of here. It's like, well, yeah, you can. It'll just be a crappy company.
Yeah.
And they'll point to one success story, that just happens to work, and they'll
right.
think, oh yeah, you can do it too, and 99% are just not going to work.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Although that may be true of all business ideas.
Oh yeah, of course. Might certainly is.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, because I think we're going to see more and more hardware ones coming out as well. And it'll be interesting. I know that. So obviously, I work for SupplyFrame now part time, and the Hackaday guys were out at the big Freescale event. They were doing a thing out. They were doing a build out there, and they were talking about like some of the stuff that they saw, and it was like cat feeder type stuff, and like a lot of the little more ditzy Internet of Things type stuff, but it's just because you're limited, right? You have a development board, and it's like, well, what are you going to do with this thing? You have a couple
drive
inputs,
some motors and
couple outputs, right? Yeah,
yeah, that's it.
So and I guess it's the same kind of thing. It's just it'll be interesting to see how much people continue to want to do that stuff, because it is kind of tough to get going quickly. I don't know, and plus people build. I mean, like people build on so much with like embedded projects too. People build so much on their existing stuff. I mean, like Mike, you probably see this all the time, right? Where you're building on libraries you already have set up, and you're building on prior versions, and they're kind of different flavors. So I'm sure that really affects things as well. Where if you're starting from scratch, it kind of hurts things.
Oh, definitely. I think the most common microcontroller that people use for a new project is the one they used for their last project.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Speaking of, how goes the new jam, the Dice Show?
Oh, Dice Show's going pretty well. We are trying to hand assemble some more main boards to further development, and so far the design seems sound. And the USB 3.0 core is basically done at this point. And so that's super exciting because that's been a long haul. And Marshall, the developer who's been working on that, the amount of effort put into that was pretty phenomenal. So now we have an open source USB 3.0 super speed core that anyone can use with an FPGA and a transceiver. And it's just about passing all of the compliance tests.
Wow, Wow.
which is pretty exciting. Which is actually an achievement that it seems most of the commercial super speed USB products haven't accomplished. Because we're finding a lot of problems with the existing chipsets that are out and their implementations. So,
how so?
They're just buggy in various ways, and
Right.
I know people who have USB 3.0 products that are having difficulty with compatibility with certain host controllers.
Okay.
In
right.
PCs, for example.
So stuff that stops them working,
or
like actually stops
it'll
them
either
connecting?
stop them working, or it'll get the power saving modes wrong, or it'll
goodness.
or it'll have various glitches that cause a pretty dramatic reduction in the maximum throughput that you can get through.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, the
Which is
reason
the whole
why
idea.
people want it. Right.
Go to USB 3. I mean, so
Right.
this technology is not really mature yet from a technical point of view.
I wouldn't say so, no, but it's becoming that way quickly. The
Right.
newer chipsets are definitely better than the very first chipset that was popular. It seems, and so anyway, that's kind of a side benefit that we weren't expecting from just building our own core from scratch, is that we kind of it's a way to work around or avoid a lot of the implementation bugs that are already out there,
And
it also
hopefully
gives us,
not introduce your own.
yeah, exactly, but it gives us the flexibility where
Of
if we
course,
do have
yeah.
bugs, we can just fix them in the future without without having to get new silicon.
How easy is it to debug something like that? Do you have?
It's terrible.
Are you? I can imagine. That's why I asked. Are you debugging at the physical layer? Or
Yes,
because to do that you need a high speed,
like
probing
a
high speed
BERT type of
USB
thing, or
3
what?
scope.
Right.
Yeah.
No, we're primarily relying on USB 3.0 test instruments, and
Right.
that are already on the market, and there aren't very many. We started with one that was kind of the lowest cost option that would do super speed, and it was pretty good to a point. But like if you were developing your own USB 3.0 product using one of the existing chipsets, it would probably be sufficient. But since we were developing our own core, we kind of started to find out that it wasn't showing us what was going on, or some of the low-level events were maybe being reported in incorrect order, or there were a number of things that were frustrating that Marshall had to deal with, and finally we just bit the bullet and bought a big, expensive, top of the line USB 3.0 test instrument, and
From who?
From LaCroix.
Oh, okay, right.
And,
Jeez. Yeah, they
it
don't
was
come cheap.
No, it was expensive. It was like, okay, do we really need this? And is it worth owing all the rest of the budget for the project on this one piece of equipment? As it turned out, I think it was worth it, because not only did it give us a second platform to verify the first against, but it also has the compliance test suite, which the first product didn't. And so the further we got into it, the more we realized, it really makes a lot of sense for us to be doing compliance tests on our core, and I think that has proved to be fruitful, because those compliance tests, uncovered a lot of things that we could fix. So it turned out that that tool also had some bugs. And, and so, we're able to sometimes find bugs in one tool. With tool A, we could find a bug in tool B, and sometimes with tool B, we could find a bug in tool A. it's all just a sign that the whole thing is just not very mature yet. But so Marshall was like daisy chaining multiple USB sniffers in a row, and which introduces all kinds of integrity questions.
Sure.
And it was. I think he's glad to be about done with the project. I'll say that. But
so
but it's pretty exciting.
All this to avoid using a buggy off-the-shelf chipset, or did you have some other motive for doing your own core?
Well, we did have another motive for using our own core, or several motives. One was just to try to save cost.
Of course,
we knew we would have an FPGA on our board anyway.
Yep.
And so we looked at the options. Was cost
that critical? I mean, how expensive are these USB 3 chipsets?
So there basically there are two options available. At least there were when I was looking around for that are available in low quantities, and those are a bare bones transceiver from Texas Instruments, and that's the one we're using, and that's like $5 or $6 in quantity, something like that.
Yep.
And then the other is a part from Cypress that has an ARM core
I've seen that one.
A USB 3.0, right? And that's like
I have a dev
that's like
board
$20.
For that, Yep.
So
that's an expensive part.
It is. $20 is a big expensive part when you're hoping to make something that's as hobbyist friendly as possible. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
So we started looking at the transceiver option just because, we thought, well, we could save like $15.
Yeah.
And also use use the FPGA that we're going to have anyway. And since we had funding for the project, or we were trying to get funding for the project, we said, well, why don't we just pitch it that we'll design our own USB 3.0 core and do it that way. And it'll cost a little bit more in development.
I was going to say, did you do the math on the return on investment in terms of time and money spent developing the core versus actually amortized over how many units you expect to sell versus the extra $15 per chip?
Well, thankfully, due to the funding source that we had from the Cyber Fast Track program, we were able to kind of ignore that trade-off and
someone else's money, yes,
and just say if we have the opportunity to spend someone else's money up front on development,
right? Of course,
and that makes our end design less expensive. And also provides the community an open source core that they wouldn't otherwise have. We figured that was worth a shot, so that's what we pitched, and awesome. And that's what we're doing.
Oh, you actually pitched that, and they went for it and gave you the money.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. So it's not like you got the money and went, we'll go and develop our own core. Okay, right. Interesting.
So I'm really hoping that someone other than us will use this core because
you spent all that time and effort.
It's a lot of time and effort into it, and I think it's a really valuable thing to be contributing.
Well, it certainly is. If the only other chipset out there to do it is $20 a pop, then what sort of FPGA resources can you put this into? Like one of those $1 FPGAs?
No. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's something on the order of like 10,000 logic elements for the USB core.
Yep.
So you're looking at like a mid-range FPGA, definitely not a.
So you're looking at like a $5
one.
or a $10 one or something like that.
At least, yeah. I think the one we have on Daisho on the main board is like a $25 FPGA, something like that.
Yep.
But we want to use that FPGA for other things in addition to the USB core.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's pretty cool. I think people will pick. I mean, especially because it's open source, because you're giving the reference design and everything else. I mean, basically, you guys are doing what a lot of companies do with reference designs, right? That's it's all there, right? It's
sure.
I think that's a very compelling case, especially. So if I recall correctly on the Daisho as well, there's a bunch of headers on the side, so it's pretty flexible. People could just develop plug-in boards. Is that right?
Yeah, so basically the main board is an FPGA, the USB 3.0 interface, a big mezzanine connector, and for whatever front end board you want, and a stick of RAM, which is a SODIMM DDR2 slot, so you can put however much RAM you want in that one slot. Other than that, the only thing on there are power supplies and one little like supervisor microcontroller and a clock generator. So it's pretty much just a USB 3.0 FPGA board that you can do whatever you want with and build your own boards to plug into that mezzanine connector.
Oh, cool.
And what's the speed on that thing? That's like one of those. Is it like one of those Samtec like fancy pants? Mezzanine ones.
Yeah, it's a high speed connector. And the main goal for the main board design was just to get a whole lot of pins out to that mezzanine connector. We're not using an FPGA with like a high speed SerDes, but we're instead trying to do support more parallel I/O, and so that's maybe the one thing that could change. Like if there's ever a Daisho 2, would be to have some high speed serial stuff.
But being an FPGA, you already have the serial lines hooked up, right? You can either use them as serial SerDes type stuff or parallel, or have you not routed them as serial differential pairs?
Well, we do have quite a few differential pairs routed, but the FPGA that we selected just doesn't have a real high speed interface. So we're just going for like the lowest cost FPGA we can that gives us a whole lot of pins and gives us the capability to do the USB 3.0 and have some RAM.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Which, of course, USB 3 is also a whole lot of pins, and RAM is a whole lot of pins.
Why do you need a lot of pins for USB 3?
You'd be surprised how many pins there are in that interface.
It's like a memory bus or something? Or what is it?
Well, it's basically partly the reason it has a lot of pins is for backwards compatibility with the ULPI interface for USB 2.0.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have to use that if you don't want to, I would suspect.
I think it is possible to do USB 3.0 super speed stuff without that, but we wanted to be able to support a USB. We wanted people to be able to plug this thing into a USB 2.0 host and do something with it. So we wanted that backwards compatibility, and then there's like a 32-pin data bus and a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, altogether, it's like 70 or 80 pins or something like that.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy.
That's insane.
And so we have one...
It's a bloody serial bus.
I know. It's a parallel interface to a transceiver that gives you a serial bus.
So the transceiver has a parallel interface. Okay.
Right.
So that's where all your pins are being driven.
Exactly. So, and one of our front end boards that's being designed right now by Jared Boone is a dual USB 3.0. So we have to hang two of those interfaces off of that one mezzanine connector. So there's a lot of pins there, and then there are all the pins for the onboard USB 3.0 transceiver, and then all the pins for the DDR2 interface. And basically it all adds up to a whole lot of pins. And it's interesting shopping for FPGAs. Like the newer FPGAs are mostly, it's hard to find a lower cost FPGA with a very large number of pins. Like if you go with a lot of pins, you have to... in most families, you have to also go with a lot of logic.
Oh, yeah, they'll scale up, right? When there's some law that they talk...
Right.
Who was they talking about that, Dave? Was that Philip or someone else talking about that in the past?
Yeah, I can't recall.
Can't remember who it was, but somebody who was on the show recently was expressing, I think, the opposite frustration. They were like, I want to
That's me.
have.
Well,
I want to
Dave
have a
always
whole
says
lot
that.
of logic and no
I've
pins.
done that, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I've
No,
been,
but
I've been,
Mike's right. Someone else was on here to at least agreeing with Dave. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want 5 pins, but I want 100. I want 1,000,000 logic elements. Thank you.
Right.
Because
In
I
our
want
case-
serial in, serial out, and a buttload of
Yeah.
logic to do stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. In our case, we wanted several hundred pins, but we didn't want to spend a lot on logic.
Yep.
Yeah. So we ended up going with the Altera Cyclone 4, which is like one generation back from what's
yes.
current.
Right.
Partly because, well, at the time we selected it, Cyclone 5 wasn't shipping yet, but there's no part in the Cyclone 5 family that has this many pins for that lower cost, and we couldn't find any Xilinx parts that had that many pins for that lower cost either.
Right. So all you did is went on the parametric search engine and went number of pins and sort by price. I
Pretty
want
much.
at least 400 pins and then lowest price first. Damn.
Yeah, that was basically the process.
Yeah. Been there, done that. And you can never get it. It's always some bastard compromise, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, like it would have been nice to go with a Cyclone 5 or one of the other newer families, just because they have some other benefits, but
Yep.
but Cyclone 4 met our needs best.
What about you worried about like long-term buying capabilities, stuff like that? Or you
Not
just figure
too
you'll
much.
migrate eventually?
I wouldn't be for those. No, they're still manufacturing ones that are 10
Right.
years old.
Yeah, they really are.
Well, isn't it usually? I think I've talked. Oh, that's who it was. There's a former coworker talking about this. It's like, yeah, you can still buy the parts, and especially in like the secondary market. But then it was a Xilinx part, and I think it was the originals. Obviously, I was working on old stuff, and so
The
was my
original
coworker.
XC3000 or something.
Yeah, no, I don't know if it was that one, but basically they start pulling it off the things that the place and route will actually compile for, or whatever you place and or route. So it actually
right.
pulling them out
Sometimes
of
you
the
got to
software.
use the old tools.
Yeah. So you have to basically archive the tools and your computer and everything else because it's like you can't get that. You can't get the new tools won't work with the old stuff. I mean, and I get why that is. You can't drag that stuff along forever, but at the same time, it could hurt you eventually. I don't know. Maybe that's thinking about it too much, but
It could, but I think that's something that's quite a few years out.
yeah,
yeah,
right.
totally.
Right, so now
Yeah,
you're
no,
going to
it's
stop
only
doing
Cyclone
this.
4, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Just kick back and rake in the bucks from your open source project, right, Mike?
That's right.
I can remember when they first came out with we were under non-disclosure agreement at the time when the original Cyclone, the original Cyclone came out. It wasn't called Cyclone 1, it was just Cyclone, but it was actually called the Tornado.
Oh,
Right?
really?
They actually gave it, that was the original game, and they were going to have different names for different markets because, Cyclone, here in Australia it's called a Cyclone. In the US it's called a Tornado.
Right.
And they were actually they actually had that name. And but they eventually dropped that before it actually came out, I think. So I don't know if there were any Tornado branded parts out there. I'm not sure if they ever made it to market, but that was the name they were going to go with.
collector's edition
until
now.
the branding people came in. And went, exactly, if you can find one.
Yeah.
If you can find a sample chip that's branded Tornado. Anyone got one?
So I was looking back through the episodes, and it was Dave Vandenbout when he was on. Obviously, he's a FPGA person as well, and it's called Rent's Rule, and that's what that
right.
gate versus
Yeah,
IO
right.
thing is. So
Right. Okay.
my OCD person, internal OCD, had to find it.
It's a bullshit rule. Like
Of course, right.
It's a pure marketing driven rule.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a distribution
or a
type of thing, right?
Perceived marketing driven.
Well,
rule,
you got to make
I
choices somewhere, so that's why.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that rule cuts down their catalog by by I don't know 80% or something like that.
Already has so many parts. There's already so many bloody varieties, and they're already like little subtle differences. I'd rather see lots of big differences rather than 10 million little pissant subtle differences.
That's true.
Yep. Yeah, I'd rather see at least one part is available that has 1 million logic elements and it's in a 44-pin PLCC package, right? Thank you very much. And just at least one. No, but there's 100 varieties of ones that, this one's got 4 SODES instead of 2. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll stop ranting.
Mike, I'm not sure if we asked you about this in the couple times you've been on, but was your team self-assembling? Like, did you find these people? Did they find you? How did this come together?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, everybody who is currently working for me now is, they're all working for me on a contract basis, and they are all people that I've met at conferences. And in many cases, they're people who were interested in my project and maybe even made some contributions to my project just on a voluntary basis before I offered them a job, because
so there's money involved too. That was going to be the other question too. Is that I was wondering
for some of them,
was
for people who are doing huge amounts of work like Marshall and his FPG and his USB 3 core.
Yeah, of course.
I'm paying him as a contractor, and I'm able to afford that because of the Cyber Fast Track funding I have for that project. And he's somebody I met at Tour Camp last time around, and I've seen him at some other conferences, and he was introduced to me by another friend of mine who has done a lot of volunteer work on my Ubertooth project, and so anyway, he just came highly recommended as a sharp FPGA guy, and we started talking and at a conference, and he seemed like he really knew what he was doing, and he was going to be out of school and looking for work. And I said, hey, I need somebody to take on this big,
bingo,
huge,
huge
part of my project.
Yeah. You look like you don't know what you're in for yet. Let's see if you can do
and
it.
it pays peanuts. Come on, monkey, let's go.
Something like that. Yeah,
that's great. No, those are the best people too. When you don't know going in, that is the best way to do it, because it's like then it's not. There's no there's not as much of a psychological component. It's just like, okay, I'm just going to kind of work at it and get it done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of my contracts that I have out there are for specific milestones. So I'll pay you X amount for accomplishing Y, and I'll so there's some risk involved if you take on a work like that. It may end up being a lot more work than you expected, but when you're done, you get paid for it, and if it is more work than you expected, at least hopefully it's rewarding work. And I think everybody that does work for me, whether it's paid or not, is contributing in part because they like to contribute to open source project.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that was my main question, was kind of like thinking about it in terms of getting, setting up an open source project seems like it would be easy to start with, right? It's like, oh, well, I'll just say it's open and people will come. But then, there's constraints on people's time, but it's interesting to see that dichotomy of like, even though they are getting paid, it's still important that you give a crap, right? Because either there's tough deadlines or, it might not be as much as an industry job or something like that. So
exactly.
That's cool. That's real cool. So how many more are you going to start, man? I mean, how many you got? How many you got on your belt?
I have
now?
too many projects going.
Well, you're like a funnel for this funding. It seems like you kind of got in there and you know the process, and I hear that's important for like that kind of stuff, like that early stage funding from
Is that
SPIR.
how it works? Yeah. Like you get one, like if you get it once, then you're almost a shoo-in to get it again and again and again. Is that how it works, or?
That may be true for some types of programs. The most funding that I've had, well, to be honest, the most funding that I've had is from Kickstarter.
Yay!
But the second most funding I've had is from the Cyber Fast Track program from DARPA, and that was kind of a unique program that is no more. Actually, in just about a week and a half, I'm going to be in DC for the final event of the Cyber Fast Track program, where everybody's getting together and showing off their projects, and so that program is no more. And while it was going, I think I had a good run of, once I had one project approved, I kind of knew what it took to get another one approved.
Yeah, right. The application process, all that other stuff, right?
Yeah. But now that it's over, I don't know that experience helps me all that much with any other funding sources that are out there. Government contracts in particular for this kind of thing, for R&D stuff,
right?
Are
they're all bureaucratic in their own snowflake unique way, right?
Yes, they are, and a lot of them are really big, like $10 million plus dollar contracts that take. It's a big investment just to bid on something like that.
Yes, and they aren't going to give it to a 1 or even 5 person business. It's going to go to a decent sized company with a proven rep.
Yeah, so it's kind of rare to find those smaller programs that are willing and able to fund projects that are appropriately sized for a small business, hobbyists, hacker spaces, etc.
Well, cool. Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, I don't know. I wonder how many people are taking on this kind of stuff as well. It's good to be in that position, I think, to be kind of defining stuff and finding people. So that's sounds like you're doing the right thing.
I'm curious to know how much competition is there. Like, if you're the only one who turns up and puts in a thing, do you automatically get it? I mean, is it, we have to spend the money. This is the only guy that applied. Well, congratulations.
And in some cases, that may be the case.
I think it might be,
yeah. Although the bigger... And I think that's one of the motivations to having bigger projects, is that if it's a big enough dollar amount, you're going to be assured, like if you're running the government program, you're going to be assured that you're going to attract some attention and people are going to apply to that program.
Definitely, yeah. So what about I'm looking through your Twitter stream, of course, from the back pages since we've talked to you last as well. What was this open source hardware thing you went to out in Denver?
Oh, in Boulder, actually.
Yeah, Boulder. Yeah, okay.
This was really cool. So this was a little event put on a couple weeks ago by the Open Source Hardware Association, so it was in Boulder, and basically what they did was they invited all the Colorado open source hardware companies, and
how many of them are there?
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Oh yeah, there were more than I think there were about a dozen that showed up.
Awesome.
And we all had like a little sort of mini trade show floor where people, it was open to the public, so people could just come and, find out about what we're doing, what all these people are doing with open source hardware. And most of us were companies that were doing commercial open source hardware, but there were a couple of folks there who were like nonprofit organizations doing interesting stuff. And our congressman, our U.S. congressman, Jared Polis, came. And so part of the reason for this event was kind of a meet and greet with him so that he could learn more about open source hardware and what it means to our community. And it was really cool. We had like this little mini trade show sort of set up for like a half an hour. And then we had a panel discussion where it was like one of each, one person from each organization that showed up, plus Congressman Polis, and we all just kind of had a conversation about open source hardware and what what the government can do to support open source hardware better, and it was really cool. I was there.
That was because Alicia's out there, is that right? Alicia Gibbs?
Yeah, Alicia's out here, and so she set the whole thing up. Nate was there from Spark Fun.
Helps that they're married, right?
It does help. Probably.
Yeah.
The PC Duino guys were there. There was a group from a hackerspace that was there. There was just a bunch of different companies like that I didn't even know existed. It was really cool to meet everybody else who's doing open source hardware in Colorado. And I just found out about it because I happened to see a tweet like a couple days before. And I was like, well, that sounds cool, I should go. And so just people like me finding out about it through Twitter or through whatever
random tweets.
We ended up with like a dozen companies there, and some of these companies are pretty big. I think Great Scott Gadgets was like the fourth or fifth biggest one in terms of revenue, and it's pretty cool to see all that stuff happening, and really cool to get the involvement of our congressman, that he was. He's probably he may be the most technologically clueful person in the U.S. Congress right now.
Clueful, huh? Yeah. Oh, that's
probably would have to be the only one.
Right. Yeah, that's a low bar to jump over, right?
And I'm not joking. Like, it's that bad.
Yeah. It is a low bar, but it's really exciting that we have somebody who's willing to listen and kind of participate in the discussion.
Totally. Yeah, I'm very surprised at that.
So what were some of the things you guys discussed? I mean, because I wonder about that too. Like, what is it, like funding type of stuff, or like tax benefits, that kind of stuff, or what would it be?
So there was a little bit of mention of funding and tax benefits, but what most of the discussion was about was patents and open access for scientific research. I think everybody there expressed some degree of frustration with the fact that our tax dollars go to research that almost all of which is then published behind paywalls.
Right.
Even if you get access to an article, it'll often be something that like you can't reproduce the experiment because they use some special software or some hardware design that for their experiment that they haven't released. Along these lines, like the day before this event, I got an email from somebody whose email signature said researcher/entrepreneur from a university. And that's the norm these days. Is that universities are, publicly funded universities are getting government grants to do research, and that research is going into closed source commercial ventures.
Yeah, that
right.
shouldn't be the case.
Right. And
it seems like that's the only way that there is these days too to get any kind of research done at all, right? I mean, we've talked about that on the show before. There's no Bell Labs anymore. There's no commercial 10-year research platforms, maybe at Google or something like that, but not for this super, that's more still commercial bent at the end. It's fixing world problems, but it's
definitely nothing like Bell Labs.
It's not the transistor, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
is there anything that one congressman can do?
Well, not really, but
it helps. It
helps a lot that we have. I think we're lucky that locally we have the ear of one person, and if in the long run, if we can get more people, more elected officials who understand our concerns and I think Congressman Polis was kind of blown away by how many people showed up and how much big business there is in open source hardware. I mean, it's not
His eyes flashed with constituency. Is that what it was?
to a certain extent.
Because SparkFun are $100 million company.
Yeah,
No.
they're a $30 million
Yes, they are.
company at least. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. I didn't know that. Last I heard, they were 10.
No, I'm sure. I thought I
Well,
saw
at the event, Nate
a
said
TED
30.
talk where they said it was 30. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, you know, we're not big business compared to things like oil and gas, right? But we're big
Right.
enough to be worth looking at and saying, wow, this entire industry didn't exist a few years ago,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
look how it's growing.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah,
growth
it's-
potential is always a thing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And that means there's venture money behind it eventually then too, right? And that's usually the kind of people that they're interested in. I mean, I hate to sound so cynical about, politicians, but, there is a significant part of their lifetime that's worried about funding. It's like that's part of what they're doing.
Definitely. It was cool. It was my first chance to meet Nate too. I got to thank him because, like, the first time I programmed a microcontroller was going through his beginning embedded electronics tutorial on SparkFun.
Cool.
And so it's pretty
That's
cool.
crazy, man.
It's pretty cool to go up to him and say, "Hey, man, he's like looking at HackRF." And I'm like, yeah, a few years ago, I was making an LED blink with your tutorial, This is,
Yeah.
he got a kick out of that.
That must be what
Awesome.
teachers feel like all the time, right? It's like, oh, hey,
Right,
thanks for
yeah.
teaching me. Now I work at Google, or now I work for this big other tech company.
I get emails like that daily.
Yeah,
Oh, I
It's
bet.
great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
good job, Dave.
And yet I said the same thing to, guys who taught me.
Of course, right?
You know? So
Pay it forward,
it's-
right?
Yeah, it goes on and on.
Yep. Well, that's
and
cool,
then
man.
in another 10 years' time, they'll be teaching other people, and it's great. I love it.
The speaking of open source hardware, so last week, we've been talking a lot about portable labs and stuff like that as well. Did you see the news from Bunny et al., all of the Novena folks?
Oh, yeah. They're doing exciting
yes,
stuff.
yeah. The
I'm
open
very
hardware
curious.
oscilloscope.
Yeah, so a oscilloscope add-on, and basically they're making modular tools, and this basically answered the question we had on the show of, well, what's the Novena good for? And like this is it, right? It's like
Right.
it's not like you're starting
Yeah.
from a front end. Basically it's like you tack a front end onto this thing, and it's basically whatever test equipment you need it to be now. Effectively, right? That's of course isn't effectively,
Right.
but having a standardized interface like this and a standardized platform, it could really be a big jumping point for a lot of people, so that analog folks like me could try and design something for it and
Yep.
go find some software smarties. And
What do you guys think about the active probe design that they're going for? Have you looked at that?
I haven't looked at it thoroughly. I've had a quick glance over it, and it's a modular based thing, right? So they've got like a digital probe, they've got a near field probe, they've got a 900 megahertz analog active probe, don't they?
Right.
well, they were
Something
using
like
like a
that, and there's
PGA or something on the front, like actually at the probe, right? That was the idea.
Right.
So it had
Yes.
like a variable
Yep.
impedance
Yeah,
and
it's
being
an
able to drive it to whatever load you
LM9850
need it
or
to be, that
something.
kind
It's
of
one
thing.
of those national.
Yeah, the ADC is on the main board, and then they have a SATA cable carrying the amplified analog signal to it.
That's cool. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I haven't studied it. Is like the whole schematic out there too? I didn't see that. Is there?
I didn't see that.
I
no.
haven't looked for it.
Yeah, I'm sure that's kind of they're probably keeping that in for now. You don't want to, but maybe not.
Yep.
Maybe, I don't know. They're pretty good about opening things up.
Right.
I've learned the hard way that not to believe people when they say that they will open source something in the future.
Oh yeah.
But
Would you get burned or what?
yeah, you just end up waiting around, and sometimes it happens, and sometimes it doesn't. It's, as far as I'm concerned, if somebody says something will be open source in the future, that's the same as saying it's closed source.
Well, because that's the trend. Because the company, because people want to either they're doing a startup or they're doing a Kickstarter or something, and they don't want to give away the crown jewels before they've shipped, because that gives potential competitors a heads up.
It does.
Right? They can and they can beat them to market, and
Bunny,
I can understand that.
Bunny is one of a few rare people who could actually make that claim, and I would trust them.
Yeah.
Right. But if I hear it from a complete stranger, I don't believe it at all.
Right. Well, and it's interesting with the, saying that kind of thing. A lot of people do that because it might be something that's not sufficiently advanced. I feel like something like this, it's like, you could open it from the beginning and be like, well, what do you, okay, here's all the info. Go ahead, do whatever you want with it, because...
See, I get people asking me for my source code for projects I haven't finished that aren't even near complete. And I go, I just don't like giving out unfinished work like that. Or, like it's not even half done. It's only 20%. I don't want to give that out. It just, doesn't feel right to me to give out some half-assed, half-baked thing filled with bloody debug code and all sorts of other crap, Yeah,
it's almost like a pride thing, and then also kind of an embarrassment thing, right? It's like I didn't release the Bench Buddy stuff until the course is ready and everything, and it's
also a support thing.
Of course, totally, yeah.
Although personally, I have gone kind of all the way the other direction, and I just publish everything from the moment of conception. But I could definitely see that burning me at some point.
Like someone being like, "Oh, Mike, I need help with this," and you're like, "Sorry, I wrote that on my toilet."
Exactly. Yeah, and it probably might give the whole open source hardware industry a bad name. If all this crap code and crap half-assed hardware comes out, just because people demand, because one person demanded that they release it, early, then, well, how does that help? Really, I think it's probably better to hold off until you've got something that's at least reasonably polished and you're reasonably confident in it and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I just say no.
Yeah.
To anyone who asks, no, you can't have my, my code that I'm not even close to finishing. Sorry.
You could set a date, right? I mean, that's always the thing that's nice is accountability. Any project is having a time when you're like, okay, it's going to be out by January 20th or whatever it is, and it's like, okay, that at least that it's out there then, but then it's still up to you.
Yeah, but if it's still half-assed, then, well, you're going it's the same problem.
True.
Yeah, but you're going to have someone bugging you on January 20th then in order to, hey, where is it?
This is actually one of the reasons.
Never promise anything. Oh, never. It'll be, I'll release it next month. Oh, no.
Right.
No, that's the worst thing you can do.
That's true.
Because they'll hold you to it. And how dare they?
This is one of the reasons that I am still a believer in release packages of both hardware designs and software in this day of GitHub.
Right.
And
totally.
There are some people who just manage their projects on a rolling basis, and you get it from the repo, and I'm not totally on board with that. I like to have a public repo. I like the fact that all my design decisions and stupid mistakes and everything else is out there for people to look through the logs. But if I haven't put out a release package yet, then, you use it at your own risk. Right? You build at your own risk, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So how much? So this is interesting because Dave, you're not using GitHub, right?
No, I've got an account, but I don't use it.
Okay. So Mike, how much incremental step do you put on GitHub?
A lot.
Yeah. So hardware too, or just software?
Oh yeah, hardware. I mean, I'll have a commit. If you look through my commit logs for a hardware project in Git, you'll see in the log you'll see change this resistor to 10K. Or
right. Didn't like placement. That was crap.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
So I will do multiple commits in a single session of development.
I would be remiss
Wow.
if I didn't bring up the XKCD comic where they shows the degradation of comments. It keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. So when you say release package, though, you mean you'll actually like tag something, then it'll show up as an official release, and
Yeah. Either tagged on GitHub or actually available for download as a tar file or a zip file somewhere outside of GitHub.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So you've got like a public and a private GitHub. Is that how it works? Or
No, but like in GitHub itself, now they've changed this over the years, but they have a feature that lets you tag a release. Now tags are a feature of Git,
Right.
where
yes.
you can make as many tags as you want that describe whatever you want, but there's a particular feature of GitHub that lets you specify a particular tag as a release, and then people looking
Right.
at your project on the web interface will see, this is the latest tagged release, and it provides them with
Right.
like they can download a zip file instead of having to do a Git checkout, a Git clone, and so you can either do it that way or you can. You can just
you could download zip files just from the
Right.
website from the latest
Exactly.
commit even, but
yeah,
again, at your own risk.
Can right. But even if you don't use that particular feature of GitHub, or your repo service of choice doesn't have a feature like that, you can always just make your release archive manually and just put it up somewhere for download.
Right. Yeah, that's like what actually KiCad does that. They have like their latest good build, good quote unquote builds, and sorry KiCad, it's still a little buggy, but yeah, I mean,
see, that's the thing putting me off that. It really
you'll get there. Don't worry. It's 2-on-1, Mike. Let's gang
That's
up on
right.
it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, well, I'll be honest. The first time I switched from Eagle was simply because I wanted to do a 4-layer board.
Right,
every
and
time.
you didn't want to pay the $500 or
Right.
whatever.
And at the time, I was like, well, it might be worth the $500 for me, but is it worth the $500 from every single person who comes after me who wants to
That's the
potentially tweak this project? If I want it to be as open as possible and encourage contributions from others, then it behooves me to explore options other than this. So that's when I made the switch.
Mike, I need you to help me write my speech because it's supposed to be about that for SolidCon, but I haven't written it yet. I'll get there.
But I mean, now I stick with it, even though I know sometimes bugs are frustrating, and I'm people who do work for me for my projects, I make them use it because and in some cases that's maybe not the easiest tool to use for the job, but I really believe in using open source software to support my open source hardware, and I believe in making my project as open and accessible as possible.
Pay it forward. Pay it forward.
Exactly. And
I'll probably make the switch. But being like I was
Lazy.
a full-time professional PCB designer,
sorry.
right? And there's nothing worse than buggy tools. That is just
It's true. It can be very
unacceptable in my world of professional PCB design. That is an unacceptable, thing that you're not willing to,
I think the tough thing is
Accept.
that it's a quick trigger to say, when you're switching tools anytime, that it's like, oh, that's a bug, right? It must be a bug when it could just be, I don't know where that menu is. Because I mean, that was what happened to me when I switched to Altium. I did Altium for a couple projects, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here.
And it's
like that
also
on any
easy
tool.
to overlook the bugs in the tools that you're used to, because
Of course, right.
you've been used to the workworkarounds for years or whatever.
Right.
Yep, that's right. That's true.
And that's true
can
of
down the
both
road.
closed source and open source software.
Yeah.
And I find that I came to hardware from a software background, and I was really a big time user and developer of open source software. So for me, it made the transition a little easier because I'm accustomed to assuming that if there are any showstopper bugs in the software that I can fix them, or
that's right.
or I can at least be play an active role in getting them fixed. In some way.
know how to bug people on mailing lists?
I know how to bug people on mailing lists, exactly. I know how to run some debugging tools, and I know how to look at the code. And now in the case of KiCad, I haven't made any significant contributions, but I at least have the confidence that if there's anything I truly need to be fixed or added to it, I could dive in and work on it, and that's an option. And just having that option available and knowing it's there is a safety blanket for me.
Fair call.
Yeah, it's warm and snuggly.
Yeah.
I just want somebody to take the bloody thing by the horns and go, right, this is the official release version and we're only going to release it once a month or something like that. Or every major, once we build up the new features and they're being debugged and tested, then here's the release. And that's what most people in the community use, from a support point of view. That's just needed to take KiCad to the next level, I think.
Yeah,
so
there's going to be fragmentation
I'm always
going
to be concerned.
Right? I mean, there's Ubuntu, right? But yet there's still however many flavors of, and before that Red Hat and, Gentoo and all those other flavors. But then there's 1,000 flavors of Linux, 600 flavors? I don't remember.
Yeah, but at least they're packaged and released as... so most people are using, okay, you're using version 10.1. Okay, so everyone knows that, whereas you're using build, 5,252, that I built myself with God knows what configured, it's just, no. Just asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't argue against you.
Thank you.
I will, forever and ever, Dave. With my every breath.
You'll lose just like every other argument, dumbass argument you try and make. When are you going to learn?
Never.
Oh, goodness.
Never give up. Never give up. Speaking of... Well, no, that's not even going to be a good segue. The Novena has 6 days left, 5 when this episode's released, so people still can get in on it, especially with this new kicker in here. So should be interesting. And I think they added a couple other stretch goals and stuff as well. So, they have the Myriad RF thing as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I'm really excited about Novena.
You got one on order or no?
I don't yet. Actually, it's on my to-do list. I keep forgetting to pull the trigger, but I plan to.
5 days left.
I know, 5 days left. I got to do that.
Business expense,
right? I found it the other day. The oscilloscope thing. I was on vacation. And I decided to start designing a circuit board on vacation, as you do. And,
of course.
Yep.
And so I was thinking about making a little add-on board for HackRF that's an oscilloscope front end.
Oh, cool.
And it wouldn't be a terrific oscilloscope because it's only 20 megasamples per second, but it streams those samples to over USB continuously, so it's good for like data acquisition stuff.
Yeah, right.
And I guess that's as fast as some of the USB oscilloscopes that are out there. But
that's one of the limiting factors, I think, right?
Yeah. So, but you can do something with a much higher sample rate and do triggering and storage and stuff, and then slowly stream the samples over USB in relation to the ADC speed, of course. But so in my case, I'm not really trying to make a great oscilloscope. I just want to kind of take advantage of the fact that I have these ADCs on a high-speed USB bus and it performs well. And in particular, I want to be able to support people attaching kind of arbitrary RF front ends to it and doing quadrature sampling, radio transceiver stuff.
Yeah, you RF guys love quadrature samples.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just,
so
because it sounds impressive.
So that's my goal is using it as an oscilloscope is like a side benefit. The main benefit is providing a baseband RF interface. But so anyway, I started just kind of searching around to see, well, how does everybody else design their oscilloscope front ends? And it happened to be on the same day that Bunny announced
right.
that. So I'm just like searching, and I find, there's something for Novena, and I start reading about it, and I'm like, wow, why haven't I heard about this yet? And, it's because it was just released today.
Stole my idea.
Well, not exactly.
No.
I mean, they're doing a very different thing. Which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, it's gonna be good stuff. So if people are going to be out at Maker Faire, Bunny will be out there as well, so you can pick his brain, hopefully. And I am also honor bound to announce the Bring a Hack dinner, which is on Sunday night after Maker Faire. Arguably one of the best parts of Maker Faire, which is 6 to 12 p.m. on the 18th at BJ's Restaurant in Foster City. So be there or be square. It'll be big. It's always big. It's usually
be
about
there
100.
or be at Hamvention.
Are you guys doing any meetups at Hamvention?
Pick one or the other. Unfortunately, you can't do both. I don't have any meetups scheduled, but if anyone's listening and wants to meet up, look for me at the Tapper booth, or look for me on Twitter, and maybe we can try to meet up.
We did a meetup at this rundown looking bowling alley. I thought it was a bar, but it was the bar attached to a bowling alley. The bar is actually quite nice, so if you want that location, I can give that to you again. And keep an eye on Mike's Twitter feed, and that can be a good place to do that. It's pretty close. It's pretty close to the place. It's fun.
Maybe we'll continue the bowling tradition.
There you go.
Or
I think some people went bowling afterwards.
Near
it's
bowling.
Ohio, you have to, right? I mean,
do you?
What else is there to do?
And meanwhile, I'll just sit here in Sydney, Australia.
Just hop on a plane, man.
In my lab alone.
Yeah. You should start working on your telepresence bot. We can, with your super fancy internet connection you're getting today, you'll be able to get a faster, higher bitrate stream and everything.
You could be the one person at both Maker Faire and Hamvention.
Oh
my God, that'd be awesome. Can you imagine? Oh my God, that's a great idea for a project, to have just like a robot at each one, and then like they're just walking around talking to each other.
Somebody wanted to do that at what's the German hacker camp? You know,
there are a couple,
CCC?
the CCC camp and
the CCC camp. Yeah. Somebody, one of my viewers wanted me to stream live, and he would carry a tablet around his neck, and then I would I'd be like walking around this thing, and unfortunately it was like 3 a.m. in the morning my time or something, so I couldn't do it. But yeah, that would have been great. Yep.
Yeah, I love the idea of the telepresence stuff, but it's always like you need like a friggin' Segway. They got those Segway bots where you put an iPad on the top of a Segway or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, I was looking at balloons at one point, but then those can't carry a big enough payload either. So it's like, got to figure something out.
I'll have to build my own, and then I'll stick the cardboard cut out Dave. I've got that big, 5'9" tall cardboard cutout Dave, and I was thinking about sticking that on a robot platform and just doing that, making that telepresence robot, and I can ship that around the world to it'll be cheaper than me going.
There you go. Yeah. The eyes could flash with like red LEDs.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah. So we should probably wrap up here so Dave can go get super schmancy internet.
Getting internet. Yep.
And I make sure I can go deflood my house.
Awesome.
Well, you're still there.
But Mike,
thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for being on again. I mean, it's always good.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on, and have a good time in Ohio. Go to have you been to the Air Force Museum yet?
No, I haven't.
Dude, you gotta go.
Heard it's cool.
Is so cool.
I drove by.
Oh my God.
And Chris
I said,
did a 1 hour video of it or something. He did a 1 hour walk around.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Dude, just go. Don't even watch the video. Just make sure you go to that. And anyone else listening, going to Hamvention, if you've never been, just skip the last day if you have to. So yeah.
All right.
Cool, man. Good stuff.
Cool.
Well, we'll talk to you. I'm sure we'll have you back on again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Talk to you later.
Catch you next time.
Igor! Throw the switch! It's alive!